Hi guys, happy Wednesday. Halfway through the week already. Wow, it's super fast. All right, I wanted to jump in this today and talk to you about the 5 tips to double your tunnel production. So yesterday we discussed about what did we discuss yesterday? Well, actually it was about, it's completely blown my mind. Isn't that crazy? Well, we talked about the cost of seed is what we did yesterday, and how it's actually relatively inconsequential to the final, usually, production from your farm. And so then today I was like, well, you've got, if you're spending that money on seed, you want to make sure you have the ideal environment to grow it in, and you actually manage that expensive seed well. So today we're going to talk about those 5 tips to double your tunnel production. The first thing I'm going to say is, what you need to focus on is you need to do a soil test twice a year in your tunnel. I have found so many growers they call me and they say, look, I'm having trouble with this. I don't know what's going on. I'd like having a soil test. Number one is 50% or more don't do soil tests. So do that. And if you're doing a greenhouse, sometimes it's best to do a greenhouse soil test. And the University of Maine offers this. This soil test is especially for if your organic matter is super high. So if you're running like 5% or higher organic matter in your tunnel, it's probably a good idea to do that greenhouse soil test. If below that, we just recommend getting a good soil test that's going to take care of your macros and your micros, know your salt levels, and your organic matter. We really like Logan Labs, located here in actually Ohio. Just a really great resource we found, and I love those soil tests. The next thing you can do, and this is actually kind of part 2 of part 1, is do a leaf test. And you can do that leaf test anytime after the first flower has started to open on the plant. Usually I think about 2 weeks after we have it in the ground in the tunnel, we like to start doing those. And there's full resources online. If you just type in doing greenhouse tomato leaf tests or greenhouse cucumber leaf tests, we'll give you all the information on how to do that. But what that does is it allows you to tell what the plant is actually uptaking. And so you may have really super high phosphorus in your soil, but it may not be available. And so that leaf test allows you to see what the plant's actually getting, and then you can base your recommendations on that. All right, point 2 is increase the size of your house. One of the things we mentioned yesterday was these little 15-foot mini hoop houses are tough to regulate properly. And so we really like to go with a little bit bigger, and so like a 20-foot or 30-foot or even a 42-foot if you can afford it, going a lot wider, larger structure. The other thing you can do, which is cheap, if you're going to put a structure up, is make it taller. We like at least 5-foot sides, if not 6-foot sides. And the reason for that is the cheapest way to add more volume to your structure. And that volume is going to protect the air inside, and it's going to cause less dips and spikes in temperature. And so it creates a better, more uniform environment. And your plants really enjoy that. They don't want to go like this all day long. So adding those 2 feet can just lift that entire house, and it's cheap. It's usually like a couple $100 to do that. And that will really make a big difference in the environment in there. So third one would be to add automated roll-up sides. So a lot of tunnels are doing roll-up sides, but a lot of times people don't want to spend the money. It's usually like $1,500, $2,000 to fully automate the sides. And if you don't, you really risk losing your blossoms. And here's the reason why. Is if you decide to put like peak vents on or even fans on the end, you normally can't get the volume of air through that tunnel, unless it's a rather short tunnel, to keep that temperature below like a 95, 100 degrees, where you'll start to lose your blossoms. And we've lost it on our farm where we just had a manual and we forgot, or somebody was told to do it and they forgot, or we were at farmer's market and just weren't home to roll it up. And what happens is that temperature spikes, those blossoms then fall off, and you lose an entire set of fruit. And in a 30 by 96 tunnel, that can be a couple grand in fruit. So just that one, just automating those sides in just that one day can pay for itself. All right, so let's talk about another thing too. Automating your watering too will really help. And so what we mean by this is when we started off, again, we were just watering when the ground looked dry. But what we realized is we couldn't see below that soil, and those tomatoes in that tunnel and those cucumbers demanded an incredible amount of water. And so what we really like to focus on is doing several waterings throughout the day. And if you don't have the Andrew Medford book, The Greenhouse and Hoop House Growers Handbook. It has a great job describing some of these advanced techniques and really talking about watering multiple times a day. And all you do is get a $30 timer. You can pick it up on Amazon and just dial it in. So every single day it's going to kick on for a period of time and make sure they get that really super uniform water. And what that will do is will prevent splitting on different sized the tomatoes. And it will also help more regulate the size and the growth. And we find it prevents some of the oddly shaped tomatoes as well. All right, so that was 4. The 5th and final one is, well, I've actually got 2 parts of this. 5A would be and spend some money, and it's not cheap, but install something like an iGrow or an environmental monitoring system. So we've talked about adding, like, let's say automated roll-ups and automated vents, but if you decide to go with an entire greenhouse management system like an iGrow, or there's Wadsworth or some of these other ones which are even more expensive, they can do a really, really good job of really monitoring the entire greenhouse environment. And what that means is, like, early in the morning there are open vents to burp off the humid air to dry the house out. When the rain is coming, they will actually shut the sides so you don't get rain in the sides of your tunnel. So it really can take the monitoring to the next level and really produce, and you can actually have these tomato specialists come in and fine-tune your controls to really give you a better management system in there. And that will really help your production go up. One of the things it will do is help shrink the internodes between your tomato clusters. So that means you're putting on more frequent blossoms in that tunnel and helping not waste as much energy on just building the plant instead of building a fruit. So that'd be 5A. Now 5B, which is kind of the cheap version of that, is to just install simple remote monitoring equipment. So we actually have been doing research on this because we just put together a course on how to build a germination chamber, and we did an entire section on taking remote monitoring. So we looked at things called a temp stick. We looked at, this is called like a wireless tag. This is something you just put in your anywhere, and it will read the temperature, the humidity, and this will actually read if it's moved. So if I set this in there and then someone opened the door, it would automatically send me a text saying, hey, someone opened the door to your greenhouse. So that could be really useful for you who are in urban areas and struggling with people, entering when they're not supposed to. But set up to get this completely installed, and it will do about a 700-foot range between the modem, which goes right into your wireless modem, and then the tag is about 700 feet. So it does a pretty good range and super nice. The temp stick does about maybe 400 to 500, and that works just over Wi-Fi. And you can use this style with the wireless tag, or you can use an actually soil probe, which is waterproof as well. So some of those systems, $100, $150 to completely set that up. If you want to spend a little more money for a little bit more reliability, you can go with something called a Monit system. And there it's MONNIT, and they sell all sorts of remote monitoring, and they do a very extensive, they're a lot more expensive, but it's a lot more professional, a lot more robust systems to manage that. So again, those are the 5 tips. Number 1, do your soil test and maybe a leaf test. 2, make your house taller, if not wider. 3 would be to automate your roll-ups, and so you can monitor your temperature better. 4 is installing and automating your watering system, so multiple times a day instead of once a week. 5 would be either remotely installing an iGrow system to completely manage your house, or the cheap version of that is to go ahead and install one of these wireless tags or a temp stick or something to give you better tracking and peace of mind too. So, if you're out and about and you see a alert come in, the greenhouse temperature fell too much, you can have someone check on it instead of going home and finding out your entire house got killed because your heater went out and it was too cold out. So, yeah, there we go. Those are the 5 tips. So tomorrow, I'm going to probably go live a little bit later. I'm going to be traveling most of the day, heading down to Tennessee to be working with some growers. So it'll probably be a little bit later in the evening. But what I want to do is I want to talk about chefs. So if you double your production, what are some easy ways to sell that product? And for us, chefs were a great resource, and we implemented one trick. It wasn't a trick, it was just something we started doing, and it really doubled our chef sales. So we'll be talking about that tomorrow, the ways we were able to easily double our chef sales, and it was exact. We looked at our records, and the weeks we did this, our sales would just jump. It was ridiculous. We should have done it every week. But anyway, after a while, we started looking back and going, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. We should keep doing that. So we started doing it more consistently. But that's something, we'll talk about that and some other common mistakes I see and how we build a system around our chefs that made it super easy to communicate with them and get those orders. So, all right, looking forward to hanging out with you tomorrow. Again, it'll probably be a bit later, but it should be fun. And if you have questions, feel free to just drop them in the comments below, and we will answer those the next time we go live. So, all right, have a great evening.